I said I was too young to settle. Now I'm alone while he's starting a family. When life gives us an opportunity, it's best we grab onto it because we don't know when we would come across such an opportunity again. It can be love, friendship, a job, and all of that. For me, it was both love and genuine friendship, but I lost mine. And as it is now, I don't think I would come across such again. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. At the time, it all felt natural. I was in my early 20s, still figuring myself out, and wanted to really enjoy myself before settling down. But I ended up making the wrong choice. Hi Reddit, my name is Lucy. I am 25 years old. The name of my ex-fiancé is Frank, and he is 28 years old. Frank and I met during those years when everything felt open-ended, when love was just one part of the many things I thought I had to explore. He came into my life quietly, without pressure or drama, and before long, I grew comfortable with the way he made the world feel less chaotic. There was something stable about him, something that made me feel grounded even though I wasn't ready to be. Frank talked about the future often, and not in the way most people my age did. He meant it. He wanted a home. He wanted children. He wanted to build a life and keep it steady. I admire that about him. I really did. But something inside me resisted it. I wasn't ready to be at someone's home yet. I had guys messaging me, and I was actually interested in enjoying my youth, flirting. I felt like I hadn't enjoyed myself like I should. So when Frank spoke about rings and growing old together, I smiled, but I also pulled back. I told myself it was too soon, too serious, too much. I felt cheated because I haven't really been into a relationship that much, and Frank had. Everyone around me did not seem to agree, or at least confirm my hesitations. My friends were still exploring, still going out with guys the way they wanted, and I didn't want to be the one who settled too early, who locked herself into a chapter before the book had barely started. Social media made it worse. Everywhere I looked, there were people posting about adventures, vacations, and clubs they had shut down. Some even went as far as posting some of the fun bedroom skills with their partners. That looked like freedom. That looked like youth. With Frank, I wouldn't get as much fun I wanted. He wasn't giving me that vibe I had imagined that would satisfy my desires. Each day, I keep thinking about the stupid thing I have done and wished I had been wiser. Frank honestly didn't do anything to deserve all of this. He loved me so much, but I took his love and feelings for granted. I mishandled a treasure and thought about a piece of garbage and called it freedom, or should I say lifestyle. If I hadn't taken that stupid decision, maybe I would have lived comfortably and probably be enjoying myself with Frank as my husband. Life would have made a lot of sense. I wouldn't have been in this messy situation I am in right now. I wanted to enjoy my youth before thinking about settling down with anyone. Frank and I at that time weren't on the same page. He wanted a family, and I wasn't ready for that. Aside from the fact that I wanted to explore the world, I also wanted to enjoy myself to the fullest. I love partying and going out with friends. I wanted to enjoy all of those things until I was ready to settle. But Frank was a very different person. We were lovers that saw things from a different side. Yes, we were more like two different worlds coming together. All my life, I had never had a chance to be free and do whatever I wanted because of the kind of family I grew up in. My parents were never the type that condoned irresponsible behavior. I felt like me not being under their watch meant freedom to do the things I couldn't do while I was with them. Back then, I didn't attend school parties or social gatherings where alcohol was involved. The only social gatherings I attended were only book clubs. It was a very boring experience for me. I never took any of those things seriously. I kept longing for my own freedom. When I finally got it, I told myself that I was going to use it to make up for all the time my parents didn't give me the opportunity. Guys, I moved out of my parents' house when I was 20 years old. At that time, I was in my second year in college. I felt really good when I started living alone. I was far from home, and I loved it back then. I was happy I'm free. I came back home anytime I liked without the fear of being scolded or grounded by anyone. I had no one to monitor the things I did. I started keeping late nights and partying with friends from college. My grades fell, but I was able to make it through graduation. My reckless lifestyle became worse. Every night my friends and I usually go to 2 clubs before going back home. It was that terrible. But after a while, we stopped because we didn't have enough income to continue such a lifestyle. And so, guys, I started rebuilding myself and took my life seriously. It was then I met Frank 2 years after that. At that time, I was open to being in a relationship that I would be appreciated not just because of my looks or bedroom skills, because most of the guys I had been with were only concerned about that. But Frank was different. He saw me beyond all of that, and he took really good care of me. When I met Frank, I was 24 years old. He always talked about us settling down and having kids, but I wasn't ready for that. I felt he was trying to cage me whenever he spoke about marriage. Guys, Frank and I met a year ago and dated for 4 months before he started talking about marriage. I felt like it was happening too soon. I know people do meet each other and get married without minding the number of years they have been together. It doesn't really matter, I know. In fact, I never gave him the excuse that we hadn't known each other for long or dated for long before talking about marriage. I kept telling him that I wasn't ready, and he kept asking when would be the right time. I never gave him a specific time because I myself had no idea when that would be. That was because I wasn't done enjoying myself and making up for those years my parents had controlled me. I wanted to keep being a free bird. I eventually started going out with other guys, even while I was in a relationship with Frank. Frank wasn't aware, or at least not immediately. Since we both weren't living together under the same roof, cheating was very easy for me. Each time I went to clubs, I would end the night with a guy. Funnily enough, each guy I had been with at that period actually gave me what I wanted, but I knew deep down that it wouldn't last, but I enjoyed it anyway. Frank and I at some point started arguing about my sudden behavior. I started replying late to his messages and returned his calls late. I gave silly excuses anytime he complained about my nonchalant behavior. Sometimes, he would drive over to my place and wouldn't find me at home. I was either in the club or in a man's house. Anytime he asked about my whereabouts, I would lie that I was with either a relative of mine or busy with work. Lying to him about that was pretty easy, but not for too long. At some point, he started noticing. I took his vulnerability for granted. There were days we argued a lot because of my foolish behavior, but you guys wouldn't blame me anyway. I wasn't ready for the kind of life he wanted at that time. My friends told me to enjoy myself before settling down. I took their advice. My friends were 1,000 reasons a bad influence on me, but I couldn't sense that early enough. Deep down, I knew I wasn't fair with Frank. He had wanted it. He had wanted me. He had wanted the life he saw with us in it, and I was not interested because I thought there was more waiting for me outside of it. More excitement, more discovery, more self. At the time, I told myself I still had time. I said I was too young to settle, and I believed that. I believed it with the same conviction that had once drawn me toward him. I thought I needed to explore who I was without the weight of someone else's dreams on my shoulders. The idea of marriage scared me, not because of him, but because of everything it symbolized. Permanence, predictability, dependence. I didn't want to become someone who shrank into domestic routines, who gave up on ambition, or who lost herself in being a wife. I was scared of losing my beauty after childbirth. Along the line, guys, Frank caught me cheating. It happened right in my bedroom. That morning, I was with a guy I had brought home from the club. Frank showed up at my place unexpectedly. At that moment, I wasn't shocked to have walked in on us. The guy quickly picked up his things and ran out. Frank was very displeased with what he witnessed. He asked me if that was what I meant by exploring. He also asked if that was how I was going to do after we got married. I had no answers to any of his questions. Frank told me that all of the time that he thought he had found a good partner, he didn't know that I was flocking around with strange men from clubs. I wanted to speak, but he shut me down and yelled at me not to speak while he was talking. He told me that he had seen enough and was glad that it wasn't too late. Frank broke up with me that day and told me never to show my face to him again. He walked out of my place and didn't give me a chance to explain myself. At that moment, I thought he was upset and overreacted a little too much, and that he would come back. Frank was very much in love with me, and I knew that he wouldn't be angry with me for that long. But guess what, guys? I was mistaken. At that time, he didn't come back. I waited for days, hoping that he would show up and tell me that he wasn't angry any longer. But neither did he call or text. About a week later, I decided to go over to his place, but it was locked. For days, I kept going over to his place, but didn't find him. It was at that point I realized that Frank was done with me for good. He never took a day from not talking to me, even though we had a misunderstanding. He meant the breakup, but didn't take him seriously when he said that. And so, guys, just like that, Frank disappeared from my life. No, I pushed him out of my life because technically I did. Guys, a few months after Frank broke up with me, I came across Frank's photo. I saw it through a mutual friend's page. I stared at him for a few minutes. He looked the same, but also older. He was smiling in a way that seemed different from how he used to. It wasn't for anyone else's benefit. It looked real. Next to him was someone I didn't know. A woman. Her hand was resting on Frank's shoulder and smiling. The picture looked beautiful, I must say, guys. But after I saw that picture, I wasn't myself any longer. I really don't know how I felt. I screamed and told myself that wasn't real. I wanted to know who the lady was, because the way they posed in the picture was more than just a friendly pose. Guys, I couldn't help myself at that moment. I stared at that image longer than I meant to. I told myself I was just surprised, that it was normal to feel a little strange seeing someone you used to love with someone new. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept asking if they were really a couple or just friends. I also kept picturing them together, wondering how they met, what their mornings were like, whether he liked her as much as he liked me. I hated how many questions I had. I hated that I had no way to answer them. It wasn't just about him being with someone else. It was the realization that time had passed, and I hadn't noticed how far apart we had grown. In my mind, Frank had always stayed where I left him, like a bookmark in a chapter I could return to whenever I was ready. But now, it was clear he had kept turning pages, even while I was stuck rereading the same lines. I didn't know who to ask for confirmation. Yes, we weren't together, but I wanted to know what was going on in his life. I was too attached, but not enough to get closer to him. More photos came from Frank. It was as if he knew that I was stalking him. He kept uploading pictures from a vacation, holiday, and dinner. Each photo confirmed that there was something going on between Frank and the lady. It felt like Frank read my mind and kept uploading intimate photos. Honestly, guys, it really broke my heart. For a month, Frank kept me and his followers glued to his page. I didn't know about others, but I kept looking forward to the next post. I usually get moody seeing those photos, but I couldn't stop stalking. Then, the one that really shattered me was the engagement announcement. I was more than angry. I hated myself that very moment I saw that post. I thought maybe it was a prank, but Frank posted the engagement pictures. That was when I knew that I had lost him for real. The engagement wasn't loud or flashy. It was just a quiet photo with a caption that didn't need to say much. Their hands, a ring, a small smile that said more than any long post ever could. Guys, I cried my eyes out. I didn't message anyone. I just sat there crying and stared at the screen, thinking about how far away that version of my life was now. I remembered the ring Frank once mentioned, the one he thought about buying, the one he never did because I kept hesitating. I remembered how we talked about places to live, about cities we both liked, about what names we might give a dog or maybe, someday, a child. None of it was real now. It had all belonged to a life I said no to, a life I had let go because I thought I needed more space to find myself. A few days after the engagement post, Frank announced the date of their wedding. At that point, I thought about putting an end to the stalking and moving on with my life, but I couldn't. I was moody and depressed. Some days I tried to convince myself that Frank was pulling a prank to make me jealous, and that he would come back to me in no time. I kept waiting and waiting for Frank, but the longer I waited, the harder it was for me to accept the truth that we were done for good. I tried to distract myself for a second because I was gradually losing my mind. I moved to a new apartment, I met new people, but nothing ever stayed. Nothing settled in the way he had. I started noticing how temporary everything felt, how easily people slipped away, how hard it was to find someone who really saw me, not just liked me, but saw me, the way he once did. And when I did find someone who came close, I realized I wasn't the same either. I was more guarded now, more careful. I kept people at a distance even when I didn't mean to. I think part of me was always comparing, even if I didn't admit it. I would hear someone laugh and wonder if it sounded like his. I would feel a hand on my back and remember how Frank used to pat me when I was uneasy about something. I couldn't stop measuring the present against a past I had walked away from. It made me tired. It made me lonely in a way that didn't look like loneliness from the outside. A month later, Frank and his fiancée got married. The wedding was simple but beautiful. I kept up with the wedding, even though it was heartbreaking for me. Frank looked very happy in all the pictures I saw that day. For a second, I was happy for him. I used to think youth was a reason to delay love, that there was a window for self-discovery that required solitude, that love could wait while I figured things out. But what I didn't understand then is that love is also part of that discovery. The right kind of love doesn't close your world. It expands it. It gives it shape and steadiness, not chains. I thought I needed freedom to become myself. I didn't see that he had offered me the kind of freedom that includes belonging. Now I watch from a distance because I'm obsessed and stuck, and also part of me still cares. I don't wish for his life to fall apart. I'm a little bit glad he's happy. I truly am. But sometimes late at night, I wonder what it would have been like if I had stayed, if I had said yes a little sooner, if I had trusted love more than fear. There's no answer to that, only the life I have now, and the one I once turned away from. By the time the reality of his new life settled in, I had stopped checking for updates. It wasn't an act of bitterness. I had just reached a point where I couldn't keep holding his milestones up against my own quiet, shapeless days. The comparisons had become too constant. Every time I saw them, I felt like a stranger to myself. And still, I wasn't doing anything to change that. I kept living, but not forward, just in circles. I hadn't imagined it would be this lonely, not just in the absence of people, but in the way my days passed without meaning. I was surrounded by noise, yet none of it touched me. I filled my time with distractions that never lasted. I bought things I didn't need. I attended events that felt more like rituals than celebrations. The lightness I once prided myself on now felt like detachment. I had space and freedom, but they no longer tasted the same. Everyone seemed to know where they belonged. Their lives were rooted, growing outward, while mine felt like it had stalled at a crossroads I never really chose. I honestly regret my past decisions. I wish I had done better or had good and genuine friends that would talk me out of those silly ideas. My family tried to, but I didn't listen. My friends had 80% more chances of making decisions for me than my family ever did. But now I realize that I was stupid. Not all friends are genuine. It happened that I got associated with the wrong ones. There were nights when I would lie in bed, not sad and empty. I thought about the dinners he might be having now, the bedtime routines, the soft, unremarkable joy of knowing someone's day from start to finish. I had turned those things down once. I had feared them. I saw them as a trap, and now they looked like a foundation I had never built. I stopped making excuses to friends about why I hadn't settled. They had long stopped asking. We exist in different phases now. Their lives revolved around school runs, late-night feedings, and budgeting for holidays. Mine was still suspended in a kind of endless possibility that no longer felt exciting. When I did talk about it, I said I was focusing on myself, that I was taking my time. I kept telling myself that love would come when it was meant to, but I no longer believed those words the way I used to. I wondered sometimes how different my life would look if I had made different choices, not just with him, but with the way I saw love, the way I treated time. I had believed I had all of it to spare. Now I understood that every decision carried weight, that saying no to something doesn't always mean something better is coming. Sometimes it just means the door is closed. I didn't blame Frank for breaking up with me. No man in his right senses would marry a cheating partner. Even if I promised to change, he wouldn't take that step. I feel so bad, but I don't hate him. And I didn't hate the woman he chose. I didn't know her, but I respected her place in his story. She had given him what I couldn't, and he had given her a version of himself I would never see again. That was the part that stung the most. Not just losing Frank, but knowing the version of him that existed with me was gone for good. I had romanticized the idea of later for so long. I thought love would circle back, that the people meant for us never really left. But that wasn't true. Some people move on in a straight line, and if you're not ready when they are, they don't loop back around. It was a hard truth to swallow, not because I wanted to change the past, but because I hadn't prepared for what the present would feel like. I had built my identity around choices I was no longer sure I understood. I wasn't proud of who I had become, but I also didn't know how to become someone else. The old life was gone, and the new one hadn't fully formed. And sometimes I let myself remember, not because I wanted to go back, but because it reminded me that I had been close once, that I had seen what it looked like to build something real. And maybe with time I could still build something new, maybe not the same, maybe not with Frank, but something that finally felt like home. Time moved forward even when I didn't. Each season passed like a quiet reminder that life was happening somewhere, just not here. My routines stayed the same. Wake up, scroll through my phone, fill the silence with tasks that barely mattered. I saw less and less of the people who used to be my everyday. Most of them had relocated to a new phase of life, one where I didn't quite fit. Their stories now began with school runs, or ended with bath time and small victories like a full night's sleep. I listened and nodded. I smiled when it was polite. But afterward, I would walk home slower than usual, feeling like someone stuck between channels. I never asked about him anymore. Not because I didn't wonder, but because the answers no longer served me. Every time I heard his name, something small and invisible tightened in my chest. Not pain exactly, more like awareness. A soft echo of something unfinished that would never be resolved. I hadn't run into him since the wedding, and maybe that was a blessing. I didn't know what I'd say if I saw him again. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything would show on my face before a word could leave my mouth. And even if I did speak, what was left to say? The story had written itself. He had made his choices. I had made mine. I know you all would be wondering what happened to me after Frank and I got separated. Well, I never went back to my old habits of clubbing and spending the night with different men. That life was bitter and time-wasting, but funnily enough, I once fantasized about it. I also got too busy keeping up with Frank's life. I became a mess and got depressed. My friends stopped checking on me or even dropped by to take me out to our regular nightclubs. But that's, by the way, guys, I could remember one night I went out alone and got hooked up with a random guy at the club. At first I thought that would take my mind off from Frank, but it didn't. We got to the hotel with lots of excitement, promising to make each other happy after a few minutes together. But when I got out of the shower, I lost my mood and apologized to the guy that I couldn't go on with our plan. His name was Martin's. Martin promised to pay any amount just so we could spend the night together, but I got offended and made it clear to him that I wasn't a slut, and that I only agreed to follow him to the hotel, because he reminded me of someone, which was Frank, of course. I got really upset and packed my things and left. Up till this moment, I haven't heard or seen Martin's. We didn't even exchange contacts that day. I felt really ashamed of myself that Martin saw me as someone he could use to keep his bed warm. Yes, I had once had fun with strange men from the clubs, but I didn't like that life any longer. The few guys I met at clubs after I left Frank stayed for a few weeks before ghosting me. Maybe, just maybe I was truly a bed warmer, though. Guys, this is so embarrassing. So I agreed to go with Martin's to the hotel so we could not only spend the night together, but also start a relationship because he looked responsible just like Frank. The way he spoke that night made me think that he wanted us to be together again after that night. But I was mistaken. He was just like the rest of them. After that day, I sat down and thought about my life. After much thought, I realized that I was really a fool for thinking that partying in clubs, going out with random men, was a big flex. I didn't know that I was wasting my time and destroying myself. Then one day, I made a decision to put an end to whatever it was that made me think I was too young to settle down at 24. I also started to have a change of mind about childbearing. No matter how painful it makes you look, especially losing shape, it would be worth it in the end. That's the sacrifice that makes motherhood beautiful. I was very foolish to think that having good shape is more important than having kids. And so, guys, I started working on myself. I even blocked Frank on all social media platforms, just so I could focus on healing properly. After blocking him and not seeing any of his posts again, I told myself I was healing, even if I couldn't prove it. There was stalking or scrolling through his page. Those were the small changes, and I was proud. I stopped pretending I was fine all the time. I stopped filling my calendar just to avoid empty nights. I let myself be still, even when the stillness felt like a mirror. Sometimes I imagined what my life would look like now if I hadn't pulled away back then. Would we be sharing a home somewhere quiet? Would our mornings be filled with the sound of a child's footsteps? I pictured those things not to torture myself, but to understand the gap between who I was and who I thought I'd become. It helped me see the weight of the moments I once dismissed. As for my parents, I dare not show up at their house with this new lifestyle. Up till now, they still haven't known that I'm not the daughter they used to know. I will try to keep it away from them, though. Update. Hello, Redditors. It's been almost a year since I updated y'all. Well, there's nothing really for me to say. I just want to let you all know that life has not been the same. I feel lonely and depressed each day. I don't know how to move on from this costly mistake I made. I'm 26, single, and lonely. I have no boyfriend or guy that's looking my way. All the guys that I bragged about that wanted to be with me have stopped flooding my social media page. Even the ones that commented on my pictures stopped commenting. Anytime I post, I barely have likes or comments. Beauty, they say, really fades. Maybe mine has just started this early. The mistake I made at 24 is dealing with me now. If I had known, maybe I should have settled down when the opportunity came. Maybe Frank and I would be happy by now. Speaking about Frank, guys, a few weeks back, I ran into him and his wife at a cafe. They looked more happy in person than they were in pictures, and more beautiful also. I stayed far away and made sure they didn't see me, but not too far, though. Sometimes I wonder if Frank even noticed me that day. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But he didn't come over, didn't reach out, and I'm glad he didn't. That moment wasn't for a reunion. It was a full circle, a quiet answer to all the questions I had let build up over the years. Frank and his wife are expecting their first child. The wife looked heavily pregnant that day. I felt a bit emotional when I saw that she was pregnant. At that moment, I said to myself that could have been me, but I messed things up. But then again, there was nothing really I could do again. I will have to deal with everything life throws at me now as a result of that mistake. Sometimes I thought I would try to reach out. I imagined writing him a letter just to say that I had no bitterness, that I hoped he was happy. But I never did. Not because I was afraid, but because I realized he didn't need to hear anything from me. And the truth is, I had already said enough back then. The silences I left behind spoke for themselves. None of my friends have checked on me. I still have them on social media and still follow them, but we don't communicate, which is fine. I guess our path in life has ended. Some are married now, some are divorced. Others are wandering like I once was, hoping to find clarity and movement. What happened between Frank and I doesn't sit in the center of my life anymore, but it shaped the edges of it. I've gone on dates, a few nice ones, some forgettable, but I don't go into them expecting anyone to fill the space Frank once occupied. That's not what I'm looking for anymore. I'm just trying to be present with whoever sits across from me, to listen better, to give more than I did before. My parents keep asking when I would settle down and bring a guy home. But little did they know that I have once chased a guy away because of my irresponsible decision. Now I'm the one going on dates looking for who is fit and responsible to be with. But every day, I keep getting disappointed. The few ones I met were only interested in spending a night with me. I have gone past that already. I can't go back to that lifestyle again. Never. It's been a year and a few months and I haven't dated. I hope this is not karma coming to taunt me, because I'm not finding this funny at all. This is so frustrating, but then I deserve it, and even more. There's no peace in knowing the choice I made. It came with loss. It has also taught me hard lessons. I was too young when I left him, but was wrong for taking his love for granted. I always told him how I wanted to grow, but wasn't sure of the aspects I needed to grow. I just didn't realize how much that growth would cost, or how long it would take to feel whole on my own. Even though I regretted how everything played out, I still can't deny the fact that I'm happy that we didn't end up together. That would have been worse because we might end up getting divorced if we went ahead without knowing that I would have an affair. The marriage would have just to fulfill all righteousness from my own end. Now, when I walk past parks and see parents pushing strollers, I don't feel the same ache I once did about motherhood. I feel something softer, like quiet respect for what they've built, for the choices they were brave enough to make. I used to think settling down was about giving something up. Now I see it was always about choosing a different kind of freedom, one that comes with roots instead of wings. Settling down and starting up a family is beautiful, most especially with someone who is responsible and can make right decisions. Frank was the ideal guy for me. I would be the biggest liar if I say that I didn't know that he was a responsible person. Sometimes I wonder if Frank ever thinks about me. Maybe in passing, maybe not at all. That used to bother me. Now it doesn't. I had my chapter in his story, and he had his in mine. Some stories end without blame, without drama. Just a quiet understanding that not everything we let go of comes back, and not everything that doesn't come back was meant to. Honestly, guys, I won't lie, but I'm hurt by this. I'm not really that happy. I still think of the things Frank and I could have done together. Anyway, I will try not to think too much about it again. Yes, I'm deeply hurt, but then again, there's nothing I can do. Right now, I'm paying the price for my mistake, a costly one at that. I wish I didn't learn the lesson this way. I'm alone now and empty. I still laugh, but not as before. And in some small way, I still carry the love we had. Not just only as regret, but as something that once was true.